Hello everyone, how's it going? Dr. Incompetent here, and I wanted to take a moment to review Underrail. So Underrail is a game that I have recently come to the end of after 2 years of playing. I believe my Steam playtime was 190 hours on this game, and I had documented my entire journey from the first time I booted up the game with no knowledge of it until the end on a Let's Play. The link is in the description below if you want to see me play through the entire game with no edits, reading all of the dialogue, all of the lore, everything that we get into, so you can see my experience with the game. Now, I've only played it once. I've only played it on the normal difficulty, and I'm not like a hardcore pipe worker like some of the people who get really into this game, and for good reason. But I do have enough experience, I feel, at this point to give my review of the game. So I'm going to give my rating for the game. I'm going to give a score for the game that I've derived over 5 different categories, and then I'm also going to recommend whether or not you should purchase the game. So it'll be kind of like both a review and a should you buy type of thing. So without further ado, let's get into the review itself. Now, I'm going to talk about the game in different categories and assign a score to it. I'm a professor, so I just felt like doing this kind of like with a rubric, like I was grading your essay, and I'm going to give you a grade because that just kind of comes natural. And this is a game, of course, that's greater than the sum of its parts, but I think I can reasonably assign a score to this game. Now, while I talk about the game, I am not going to spoil anything. I'm going to treat this, though, as though maybe you've never even played it before. I'm just going to, so you can like make a determination on whether or not you want to buy it, and I'm not going to spoil it, but if you have played it, I think you'll understand, perhaps where I'm coming from. So just know that I'm not going to mention certain specifics that would spoil endgame content or the DLC or any of that stuff. But I will be talking about Underrail and the Expedition DLC because I played through the entire package of both the base game and the Expedition DLC, and I think they're both fantastic, so it worked out, and that's how I'm going to review it. So Underrail is a throwback, old-school RPG that is unashamedly and respectfully, honorably, and admittedly trying to channel Fallout 1 and 2, like these kind of very at least in today's terms, I mean, not for me because I played them when they first came out, but old school, top-down isometric RPGs, and specifically the post-apocalyptic variety. And so you're going to get with this game a story-driven, post-apocalyptic, sci-fi infused RPG that is as punishing and as old school games were, and with a lot of the sensibilities and design choices of an older game, and that's for better and for worse, as we'll see. So that's kind of like the intro to the game. So if you like, single player RPGs where you begin with a character at like almost no skill level and you stay with them for the entire course of the game and basically play with them mostly just by yourself, with the exception of a few quests and things, and level them up, get super powerful, do quests, help people out, and make changes to the world and figure out what's going on in this situation and uncover the mystery in the story, then this is a kind of a game that you would like. If you like post-apocalyptic settings, if you like sci-fi, supernatural, all of that stuff kind of comes into play here. So the first category that I want to review for Underrail would be the graphics. Now, graphics are interesting to score for a game like this because they don't really matter, like in the sense that that's not what this game is going for. This game isn't like trying to knock your socks off visually because it's about the atmosphere, the story, the old school vibe. That being said, I'm still going to review them, and I would give the presentation in this game an 8 out of 10. And that means like I'm evaluating it not against a AAA contemporary title, but relative to what it is. I think the graphics are good. I think that everything is, you can tell what it is for the most part when you see it. I think it has a very distinct style that so much brings to mind a classic game like Fallout, and it's very serviceable. I think it all looks just good. It's not like I'm blown away and it is, hand-drawn art masterpiece style game where you're just like savoring and breathing it in and just it's breathtaking to behold. It's not that kind of a 10 out of 10 on visuals, although I will say that while most of the main game is pretty not monochromatic, but it's just homogeneous in the sense that you get like either caves or ruined city kind of locations, underground subway-esque areas, and so there's not much variation, with the exception of some locales. But when you include the DLC, especially, I think the visuals do amp up a bit with the art style of what happens in the DLC. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just saying it's like there's some really cool stuff there. But overall, I would give this game a nice 8 out of 10. It's presentable. It's better than average, but it's not mind-blowing. And I'm going to give the sound score for this game the exact same review. For as far as the sound for the game goes, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Now, the sound is really meant to be background for most of this game. It is ambient, kind of almost electronic ambient music that is very, very minimal. And so because it's minimal, you don't have too much of a memorable score that you really keep with you. There's the main theme, sticks out, but a lot of the game is just silent. There's not much sound going on. But what sound there is good. And the sound effects are serviceable. So again, I think that those are conscious aesthetic choices to contribute to what they were going for. Old school game, very atmospheric, and so those make sense. And again, the sound is good, but it's not like I am just blown away and I'm listening to the soundtrack on my own time or something like that. And neither of those things, though, are really meant to necessarily be the linchpins that make this a phenomenal game, right? They're just there and they help, but they're not like the key pieces of the game, which you'll get to see in a moment. Now, the controls of the game is the third category I'm going to review, and for me, this is where you're going to hear a lot of back and forth on this. Just every review is subjective, and there's a lot of contention, there's a lot of diehards, there's a lot of people who are immediately put off by this game, so, you're going to get some real divisive comments. Admittedly, that's just to be understood with a game like this that is just unashamedly a throwback. But for the controls, I'm going to be thinking about how the UI works and how the gameplay functions with movement, combat, all of the stuff that you're doing, just controlling the game. For the most part, everything works just fine. Okay? It's okay. The UI is fine. It's a little small in places, and I do have some complaints about the inventory. I wish you could, for example, like organize by weight or some other things, and that's pretty granular, but as you'll see when you start to play the game, a lot of the game is spent in your inventory trying to manage it and make sense of everything, and I don't think it's necessarily as friendly as it could be. And there's a lot of the issue with the game and the controls that comes with the fact that it's just not laden with quality of life features. And that's okay. Like, old games weren't. That's just how it is. I understand, like, the same thing with the graphics and the sound and the controls. I understand. This is like a small studio. It's a labor of love. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm just being honest that some of the stuff, some of the choices are less than the most friendly for the user experience or the most respectful of your time. Again, some of those choices contribute to the overall aesthetic of the game, of being in this world, and the lack of options and the survival elements. So I totally get it. I'm just, griping from my side that there were some small things that I thought could have been improved upon to be more player forward with some of the control choices. So the combat makes sense, okay? But for example, I would love it if you could either take back a move like you can in, for example, Fire Emblem, where you move your character and you get into position, and then once you've moved, you realize, like, for example, you don't have line of sight on something, or you can't actually target it, or you don't have enough action points left to take the action you intended to take, then you can just, like, whoops, and go backward. Like, some kind of a take back like that. Now, I get it. It's like the game demands a high level of skill and a high level of attention and focus, and that's cool, totally. I understand that. I'm just saying, like, for me, sometimes I make mistakes, and then I, have to reload the game and play a lot of content back over, and that's on me. I get that, but just overall, I think it could be nudged up a little bit to be more friendly, and the UI could be more intuitive, larger, easier to sort, and things like that. And so, for me, I give the control, which governs, how you play the game, and the UI, a 7 out of 10. It's like, it's fine, okay? It's not like a deal breaker for me personally, because I grew up on these old games, and so I get it. But having been spoiled by newer games, there's just some things that you kind of would like. For example, I'm not going to spoil too much, but your travel options for getting around the map are, just diabolical, and it makes you feel the space of the game. Like, I'm not saying you have to have the kind of fast travel like Skyrim or something like that, but at the same time, there were moments when I would just die inside, when I would realize I had to walk across the entire map to get someplace, for example. And there just was not an easy way to do that, especially not in the beginning. But at the same time, that's part of it, okay? So just understand, like, if you get into that headspace when you come into it, I think you can be more friendly and accepting of the control and the difficulty and the punishing element of it when you take into consideration that it's a conscious design choice in many cases, and that it's a throwback, old school kind of a game. Now, the next category I want to evaluate is the story, and this is where the game, for me, absolutely crushes it. This is one of the best stories in a CRPG I've ever experienced. It is why I would evaluate this as one of the most memorable and noteworthy CRPGs I've ever played. Like, I will never forget this experience. I think it's a phenomenally written game. The descriptions of the areas, the descriptions of the people, the dialogue, the story itself, I mean, I am talking top notch. And it is, in my opinion, the reason to play the game. The combat and the min-maxing is fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, leveling up, getting new abilities, min-maxing your stats, getting the best gear, like all of that, the RPG stuff, and the tactical strategic battles, that's completely cool. But for me, it's the story that makes this game a gem. It's like it's a flawed gem, but this is what brings it all together. Like, if this experience did not have this kind of a story, I think that this would be a far less tolerable of a game. Like, I don't know how readily I would recommend it unless this genre was just 100% your jam, okay? So the story is absolutely amazing in both the main game and the DLC. In fact, I talked to a lot of people who think that the DLC writing is even elevated a notch above some of the main game stuff, and I think it's all really, really well done. So 10 out of 10 on story. Perfect score. Next, I'm going to just kind of use an umbrella category of fun. And this is where I'm going to talk about all of the kind of intangible stuff that contributes toward just like, what is my experience of playing this game? Did I have a good time? and, what makes it work beyond graphics, sound, control, and story. So for me, this game is fun. I enjoy, like I said, the combat system is a lot of fun. It rewards thinking, strong decision-making, planning, very, very fine-tuning detail with your build. In fact, if you go online on the Reddit or the wiki or on, Steam's workshop, you're going to see just a fantastic wealth of resources of people who have created builds and played through the game on like the hardest difficulty level, dominating, and use like just very, very nuanced and particularly chosen builds to either challenge themselves or min-max to some kind of unfair advantage potentially. So there's so much you can do with the combat system, with the leveling, with the character customization that makes this unbelievable. There's a lot of skills like you would see in Fallout. There's cool weapons. There's psionics, which I was a psionicist in my playthrough, so you have like some kind of magic mind power stuff going on. There's a crafting system in the game. So all of that is awesome, okay? It can be really, really frustrating at times. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes the combat doesn't work in the way you think it will. You'll see me rage about missing with grenades or line of fire issues and things like that. But that's just, at the time it feels really painful, but in the big picture it's not a deal breaker. So when you combine the combat system and the combat and the RPG elements of leveling up and getting stronger, absolutely great in this game. Additionally, I think the atmosphere of the game is just one of a kind. Like, you immediately feel it when you get into it. It's a living world. The people feel real in terms of like their position and what's going on, and everything rewards exploration or punishes exploration, and it makes it incredibly unique for me, and for me, fun. There are times when it's really, really hard and will crush you, and that is also a part of this game that I think you should know about as I review it. It is hard. This is a hard game. I beat the game, and 1.5% of players have beaten the game on Steam. Now, granted, probably a lot of that is because people were off-put by either the difficulty, the control, and just quit early, like, within the first few minutes of playing the game, or because it's such a long game, it's just a marathon and not that many people dedicate the time to finish it. I understand that. It's not like I'm incredibly skilled, but that should be encouraging, actually. I'm not incredibly skilled, and I beat the game. So don't feel like you have to be a master to do it. I'm bad. I just was able to put enough time into it and think about it and level my character up to the point where I was strong enough to defeat the end boss. Now, all in all, everything that I've said, vibe, combat system, the feel of the game, the atmosphere, everything coming together in terms of how the graphics, sound, controls, and story synergize, for me, the fun is a 9 out of 10 because I love this kind of a game. Okay? And so, overall, I give Underrail, if I'm weighting these categories evenly, like this is my rubric and you're, in my composition class, and this game was your essay, I mean, this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive, but I give this an 84 out of 100, all right? I give this game a B in terms of my review. That being said, I still think it's one of the best CRPGs I've ever played. However, it's just not as polished or as player-friendly with quality-of-life features as some other games that I've played in terms of CRPGs where, you do have a great story, but you also have a little bit more oomph and friendliness with the game, but not much. I mean, and so take that for what it's worth. I just think it's a flawed gem, and it's a game that I don't think enough people have played. And now I want to talk about, should you buy it? Should you play it? In case you couldn't tell, I'm probably going to recommend this game to you, but on these conditions. If you are a person who enjoys difficult single-player RPGs with a great story, then this is for you. I mean, if you're a person who... I know Planescape Torment was not single-player, but it's like, it's got a great story. If you loved Fallout, if you love post-apocalyptic games, but the old Fallouts, I'm not talking about Fallout 3, 4, and if you like games that reward strong decision-making, strong character development choices, grinding, I think that this is definitely a game I would recommend. It's not very expensive, and it gave me 190 hours. So in terms of the value, it's phenomenal. I would 100% recommend you get the Expedition DLC. Now, not being spoilery, but I'm going to tell you that this DLC does not come into play until later in the game. So you are not getting to this area like with your new character. It will take you some time to get to the DLC area. It's meant as kind of like a mid to late or even end game portion of the game, but it's unbelievably well done. There's completely unique enemies. There's a totally different vibe to it. There's great writing. There's more to the story that you learn. So I think both pieces are great. And if you are a fan of, 1990s era CRPGs that are these isometric top-down, turn-based strategic battles, that kind of a thing, I really would say you should give this game a chance. Try to look past some of the less than friendly design choices, some of the clunkiness and wonkiness with, the UI and the travel system, and my God, I'm not going to spoil it, but the economy. There are some things where they're intentional, but wow, they're hard to swallow in places. And that, even though it just makes it like that's Underrail, baby. That's what it is. And so you will be part of this vibrant community. People still play this game. They still love this game. They still min-max all the way to, the end of time with different builds, try to beat it on the hardest difficulty level. And they would only do that if there was something here that spoke to people that was worth playing, and I think it's worth playing. So that's my review, and that's my recommendation, okay? So check out my Let's Play if you want to just see some gameplay of this. I also might do a beginner's guide to this just to help you get started in the game, understand the controls, the systems, the game philosophy, and stuff like that. If you're still kind of on the fence about whether or not you should purchase this or if this is the game for you. And thank you so much for watching. I would love to know, if you're a pipe worker, what do you think about this game? What is your review of the game? Was I too harsh? Was I too kind? What do you think about this? Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching. Take care.